In 1997, VF-213, the Black Lions transitioned from the F-14A to the D. Now, the basic differences between the A model Tomcat and the D were the engines. The D had the F-110, the GE motor, instead of the Pratt & Whitney. The radar, the D had the APG-71 instead of the AUG-9, fully digital system. The D had infrared search and track. That's why if you look at a picture of a D versus an A or a B, the A and B just have a TCS, where a D has a TCS and an IRST under the nose. And then the final basic difference between the A, B, and the D is the D has a different ejection seat. The seat's still made by Martin Baker, but it's the NAS seat instead of the GRU-7. So the most basic difference in the D ejection seat is there was no upper ejection handle. Now in 2002, VF-213 was fresh from their war cruise. They were the second carrier on station after 9/11 aboard Vinson, and they'd flown a bunch of combat sorties during that deployment. So now they've switched from CAG-11 to CAG-8, and they've cross-decked from Vinson to the Theodore Roosevelt. Now during the interdeployment training cycle, which is basically the time between your last deployment until your next deployment, the Air Wing gets together for the first time at NAS Fallon. And this is where the Air Wing starts to coalesce in terms of strike planning and execution, and also carrier ops. You kind of treat Fallon like an aircraft carrier. So it really gets the Air Wing thinking as a single unit for the first time as they get ready for the next deployment. The other thing that happens there is you bring the other warfare commanders aboard to start to gel with the Air Wing. So this includes what we call Alpha Whiskey, which is the Air Warfare Commander. This is a surface warfare officer who is the captain of the cruiser in the strike group. So here's a picture of the USS Antietam, which is a cruiser with the USS Ronald Reagan. This is a good representation of the Alpha Whiskey asset. So at Fallon, the Air Warfare Commander, Alpha Whiskey, was a captain who had previously flown an EA-6B Prowler and an E-2. So he went to the Black Lions CO and asked if he could get a flight with them, explaining that he was backseat qual and he'd had some flights in other airplanes. So the F-14 skipper thought that was a good idea, and you want your air warfare commander intimately familiar with the Tomcat. So one of the Black Lion JOs, a Lieutenant Jeff Vickers, was given the nod to do this FAM flight with the surface warfare officer, Navy captain. So the day comes, they're scheduled for a 2-plane event where the basic conduct of the flight is going to be a performance demo. Jeff's going to show the captain what the F-14D is capable of in terms of top-end speed, G, and other things like that. Do a little bit of what we call a squirrel cage, some acro. And then they were going to do some intercepts with the wingman, give him a chance to use the APG-71 in a very basic sense. And then they were going to tank off of one of the Air Wing S-3s to show the captain what that looks like. So Jeff briefs, the first thing they're going to do is a FOD check, where he'll get the airplane to 300 knots, roll inverted, and make sure there's no loose items around the cockpit. So they get their flight gear on, walk to the airplane. Plane captain assists the captain with getting into the backseat of the airplane while Jeff does his pre-flight, gets in, starts the airplane up, goes through the start checks, taxi the runway, launch without incident. So another important system with respect to this story is in the back seat, there is a lever that determines the ejection sequence. The forward position is labeled pilot, and the aft position is labeled MCO, which stands for Mission Commander Option. So basically, in the pilot position, if the RIO ejects, only the RIO will go, and if the pilot ejects, both will go if the handle is in the pilot position. Now, if the handle is aft in MCO, which is where it was normally placed with fleet crews, then if the RIO initiates ejection, both seats will go. Same if the pilot pulls the handle. RIO will go, pilot will go. So for FAM flights like this one, generally the ejection select is in the pilot position, and it was for this flight. All right, let's go to the training aids. So they launch out of Fallon. They're over one of the warning areas. Jeff accelerates to about 300 knots, asks the captain if he's ready for the inverted check. Captain says he is, so he rolls the airplane inverted. To stay level, he programs a little forward stick, and they get to about half a negative G. So later, when he was recounting what had happened, Jeff characterized his state of mind as kind of time compression, which reminds me of the episode where I described what happened when the Canopy came off of the A4 I was flying, launching out of Oceana. He says the first thing that happens is he hears a loud pop, followed by smoke. And his thought is that they've had an ECS, an environmental control system, basically the air conditioning in the F-14, failure. And then there's a total loss of pressurization. It turns out the smoke that he saw was actually the det cord blowing the canopy off of the F-14 as part of the ejection sequence. So he rolls the airplane back upright, and immediately he realizes what has happened. Now here are the emergency procedures out of the F-14D NATOPS for a canopy light / loss of canopy. There's only one boldface step. Remember, boldface are the procedures that have to be committed to memory by aviators. And that's the first one, canopy / boost close. And then in parentheses, you can see it says canopy remaining. And in this case, of course, the canopy was already gone because of the ejection sequence. Step 2, airspeed and altitude below 200 knots, 15,000 feet. Step 3, seats and visors down. Step 4, if the canopy has departed aircraft, perform controllability check. Step 5, land as soon as possible. Although he's concerned that the controller cannot hear him because he's still going 320 knots and now he's in a convertible F-14, he transmits Lion 52 emergency. My Rio just ejected. And in response, he hears Desert Control come back and say, understand your wingman ejected? And he comes back with negative. My Rio ejected. I'm still flying the plane. And the controller comes back with, okay, understand your Rio ejected. You're flying the plane and you're okay? So Jeff says, yes, he's okay. He's flying a convertible. And he rolls a little bit wing down and can see a good shoot. So he was relieved that the ejection sequence had worked as advertised for the captain, and he was floating down towards the desert. So as the captain continues his descent, a Hornet that was attached to Strike U at Fallon takes over as on-scene commander and directs one of the Air Wing H-60s and the station SAR Hilo, a Huey, where it looks like he's going to land. Meanwhile, Jeff's wingman joins up on him to make sure there's no structural damage when the canopy came off, and there is none, and Jeff turns back for Fallon. So on the way to the field, Jeff slows down in 10-knot increments to make sure that he has control of the airplane as he approaches approach speed, and he does. He remarked later that as he got through approach speed, it was weird that the airplane was eerily quiet, not much louder than the airplane normally was, with the canopy closed and the ECS blowing, which was pretty loud. And also, he said the landing checklist out loud, just like he would have if there had been somebody else in the airplane, just to make sure he didn't miss anything. So he gets on deck, rolls out, pulls back into the line. He says he was amazed at how many people were waiting for him. There was a crowd waiting. Shuts the airplane down, gets out, and the first thing that happens is the skipper of the Black Lions gave him a big hug. So meanwhile, the captain is picked up. He's transported from the desert floor back to the air station and then taken by Navy ambulance to the local hospital where he's observed. He's fine. Later that night, in fact, he's good enough to hang out at the officers club at Fallon. And Jeff and he have a conversation. And Jeff basically asks, what happened? And the captain admits that when they rolled inverted, he wasn't sure where to put his hands. So he kind of balled them up on his thighs, and somehow they found the handle, and he inadvertently pulled it. So fortunately, everything worked as advertised, meaning seat-man separation, shoot, got on the ground. He knew to release his coke fittings, and he was okay ultimately. So that was the story that lasted through the following deployment. Alpha Whiskey wanted to know what it was like to fly an F-14, and he found out and more. As we say, he literally got the t-shirt. All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you're a first-time viewer, please ring the bell and become a subscriber so you don't miss anything. Give me the likes and comment. Check out the links below for merch and where to get the Punks Trilogy, my first 3 novels about a Tomcat squadron that has just been reissued by the Naval Institute Press. Use the discount code PUNKYT when you check out at usni.org for 25% off. If you'd like to help support this channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon below, or become a patron at patreon.com/WardCarroll. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again soon.